Thomas wiped his greasy hands on a rag and leaned back to examine the broken starship. He had been working as a repairman for years on the orbital trade station, fixing engines, wiring, and life support systems. His job was simple, his life quiet, and he liked it that way. He did not want adventure, nor did he expect anything extraordinary to happen. Until that day, a sudden alarm echoed through the station. Red lights flashed along the hallways, and the usual hum of machines felt sharper, tense. Thomas frowned, tightening the straps on his tool belt. A ship had arrived, one he had never seen before. It was large, almost regal, with smooth curves and a faint golden glow along its hull. From the markings, it was clear this was a royal vessel of an alien empire. Everyone on the station knew it was forbidden to touch such ships without permission. A voice over the station intercom called his name. "Thomas, you are needed. Now." He glanced around at the other engineers. They avoided eye contact. None of them wanted the risk. But Thomas knew that if he did not respond, the ship might be lost. With a deep breath, he grabbed his toolkit and hurried to the docking bay. When he arrived, the scene made him stop. The royal ship's outer hull had several fractures, and smoke escaped from a side panel. Lights flickered erratically. He could see shadows moving inside, but no one came to meet him. He felt a slight unease. These were no ordinary passengers. This was a court, an entire hierarchy of aliens, and their technology was far beyond anything humans had built. A dock officer, small and nervous, approached him. "Thomas, the Queen, she is trapped inside. The ship's systems are failing. No one else can enter safely." Thomas swallowed. He had repaired broken engines and life support chambers, but a royal alien vessel? This was different. And the Queen trapped inside. He had heard stories. She was the ruler of an empire spanning dozens of planets, her word law, her decisions absolute. The thought of causing a mistake that could end her life made him nervous, but he knew he had no choice. He stepped into the ship. Immediately the air felt different. The gravity seemed lighter. The walls shimmered with soft colors that changed as he moved. Panels with strange symbols flashed warnings. Thomas took a deep breath. He had no idea what half of these systems did, but he had tools, knowledge, and a methodical mind. That had always been enough. The corridor led him to the chamber where the Queen was trapped. Smoke poured out of broken conduits, and the floor beneath her shimmered dangerously. Thomas's eyes widened. She lay on a raised platform surrounded by faint energy fields. The Queen herself was unlike anything he had imagined. Her skin shimmered in shades Thomas could not name. Her eyes were large and luminous, and her presence filled the room like a bright light. She seemed calm, but her breathing was shallow. He quickly assessed the damage. "The energy conduit here is unstable. I need to reroute power manually or she will be hurt," he muttered to himself. The Queen opened her eyes and looked at him. Her voice was melodic, almost like a song. "You are human?" she asked softly. "Yes," Thomas said. "I fix things. I can help you, but I need to work fast." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Perhaps she had expected someone from her court. Perhaps she did not trust a human. But she did not stop him. Thomas moved carefully, adjusting panels, connecting wires, and stabilizing the energy fields. His hands worked quickly but steadily. Every decision mattered. Every second counted. As he worked, the Queen's advisors appeared behind a protective barrier. They whispered urgently to one another. Thomas could not understand their language, but the tone was clear, fear and amazement. They had not expected a human to attempt this. Their Queen's life had been at risk, and now this simple repairman was standing between her and disaster. Minutes passed like hours. Thomas ignored the heat from the sparks and the burning smell of melting conduits. He focused on patterns, on logic, on the simple human ability to see a problem and find a solution. With a final adjustment, the main energy conduit stabilized. Lights returned to normal. The Queen's breathing evened out. Thomas stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It should hold for now," he said. "You're safe." The Queen slowly rose to her feet. She looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Her voice was low, almost reverent. "You saved my life, human. That is rare." Before Thomas could respond, the advisors began speaking loudly among themselves. Their gestures were exaggerated, and the tone of their voices was urgent. Thomas realized they were trying to communicate something important, but the words were foreign. One of them stepped forward, pointing at Thomas and then at the Queen, nodding repeatedly. Thomas frowned. "I think they are thanking me." he asked, though he was unsure. The Queen's eyes sparkled. She turned to her advisors and nodded slightly. The whispers stopped. Then, one of the senior advisors stepped forward with a ceremonial cloth, bowing deeply before Thomas. They placed it gently on his shoulders. Thomas froze. He had repaired engines and broken systems, but he had never been given such honors. "You are chosen?" he asked. The Queen smiled faintly. "The court believes so. Your actions show a strength and calmness that our traditions say belong to one who is chosen to protect and guide me." Thomas blinked. I just fixed the ship. That is all." But the court did not hear him. The whispers began again, this time with excitement. Thomas looked around. Every member of the court seemed to be observing him, evaluating him as if he were no longer just a human, but a symbol of something far greater. Thomas felt a strange mixture of fear and disbelief. He was a simple repairman. He had no royal training, no experience with diplomacy, and certainly no idea how to navigate alien politics. And yet here he was, standing in the royal chamber, honored by an entire alien court. The Queen stepped closer. Her presence was warm yet commanding. "You do not need to speak," she said softly. "Actions have already told us who you are. What matters is that you are here now. That is enough." Thomas took a deep breath. He looked at the Queen and then at the advisors who still bowed before him. The weight of the moment began to sink in. He was not sure what this all meant, but he understood one thing clearly. Life would never be the same again. For the first time, Thomas felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. He was no longer just a repairman in a quiet station. He was part of a story much larger than himself, a story that involved a queen, a royal court, and perhaps an entire empire. And even if he did not yet understand the full meaning, he knew one thing. He would face whatever came next with the same calm, steady hands that had saved a life today. The chamber doors opened and Thomas was led to a small room nearby. He was given food, water, and a chance to rest, but his mind would not settle. Every sound, every movement in the palace reminded him that the court's eyes were on him. He was aware of the whispers, the glances, the quiet admiration. He had never experienced anything like this, and yet he did not run. His human curiosity, his patience, and his sense of responsibility kept him grounded. Later that evening, the Queen visited him quietly. She sat across from him, observing him closely. "You do not speak like others," she said. "You see the world simply but clearly. That is why the court believes you are chosen. You do not follow tradition blindly. You find your own path." Thomas shook his head. "I am not chosen. I am not a hero. I fix things. That is all I know." The Queen's eyes softened. "Perhaps that is what makes you worthy. You do not seek power, yet you bring solutions. That is rare among rulers and courtiers alike." Thomas did not know how to respond. He had never been praised for intelligence or calm thinking before. At home on Earth, he had always been ordinary. Here, among beings of great power, he was extraordinary simply for being himself. That night, Thomas lay awake thinking about what had happened. The quiet life he had known seemed impossible now. The court, the Queen, the strange reverence, they had changed everything. Yet there was also a strange comfort in knowing that his skills, his simple human approach, had made a real difference. The next morning, Thomas would have to face the court again. There would be questions, perhaps tests, and the whispers would grow louder. But for now, he allowed himself a small moment of pride. He had survived a royal chamber filled with unknown dangers, saved the Queen's life, and been seen as something more than just a human repairman. He closed his eyes and imagined the quiet starry sky beyond the station. Somehow, despite the strange honors, the alien traditions, and the weight of the court, he felt ready, not because he was chosen, not because of destiny, but because he was Thomas. And that was enough to face the unexpected. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall, crystalline windows of the royal palace. Thomas stood in the guest chamber, adjusting the simple clothes the attendants had given him. Everything felt strange. The colors, the textures, and even the faint hum in the air from the palace's systems. He had never been anywhere like this, and yet he had to face the court today. A soft knock sounded at the door. One of the Queen's advisors entered, bowing deeply. "The Queen requests your presence in the main hall, human," the advisor said in measured tones. Thomas nodded, unsure if he should curtsy or simply walk straight. In the end, he chose the latter. He followed the advisor down long corridors filled with statues, tapestries, and lights that shifted gently as he moved. Each step echoed faintly, reminding him of the distance between his simple life and this new world. He tried to focus on the task at hand, understanding what the court expected of him. When he entered the main hall, the sight made him stop. The hall was enormous, far larger than any building he had ever seen. Hundreds of courtiers, advisors, and attendants were gathered, their eyes fixed on him. Thomas felt a wave of nervousness. These were beings of great power, many of whom could have looked at him and decided he was unworthy. Yet now all eyes were on him, watching his every move. The queen sat on a raised throne at the far end. Her presence was commanding but calm. She looked at Thomas, her luminous eyes studying him carefully. "Human," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "You are here." Thomas bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said. "I am grateful to serve in any way I can." Whispers spread through the crowd like wind through leaves. The advisors leaned toward each other, speaking rapidly in their language. Thomas could not understand the words, but the expressions on their faces told him everything. Surprise, awe, excitement. They were interpreting his modesty as humility and wisdom. The queen raised her hand, silencing the room. "The court has spoken. You will remain with us at least until your role is understood. They believe you are chosen. Do you accept?" Thomas froze. He had not come here to be chosen for anything. He had come to repair a ship. I am not sure I understand, Your Majesty," he said. "I am only a repairman. I do not fit your traditions." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Perhaps that is exactly why you are worthy. The court sees honesty, courage, and calm in your actions. These are qualities our legends describe in one who is chosen to aid the ruler in times of great need." Tomas's stomach twisted. He had heard stories of humans being brave and clever in books, but he had never considered that his own simple thinking could impress an alien court. He tried to step back, but an advisor gestured toward a seat at the side of the hall. Thomas sat, hands resting on his knees, feeling the weight of 100 eyes upon him. As the court began to speak, he realized that misunderstandings were already forming. One advisor whispered to another, pointing at Thomas and nodding vigorously. Another placed small charms on a nearby table, likely part of a ritual Thomas could not yet understand. They were treating his every gesture as symbolic, as if each action held meaning beyond what he intended. Thomas cleared his throat. "I only fixed the queen's ship. That is all. I did not intend anything else." A loud murmur ran through the crowd. The queen tilted her head slightly, a small smile on her lips. "Your intentions are clear to me," she said. "But actions speak louder than words. The court believes your calm and clever handling of the crisis fulfills an ancient prophecy." Thomas shook his head, feeling more lost than ever. He had read enough legends to know they often made little sense. "Prophecy? I am no prophet. I am only a human." The queen's eyes glimmered with amusement. "Perhaps that is what makes you extraordinary." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Thomas was introduced to advisors, generals, and nobles, all of whom bowed deeply or offered words he did not fully understand. He tried to respond politely, but every attempt to explain his simple motives was twisted by tradition into signs of wisdom, bravery, or destiny. One young advisor, barely taller than Thomas, approached him cautiously. "Sir, chosen one," the advisor whispered, "you must learn the ceremonial ways. Even small gestures have meaning here. One wrong move could insult the court." Thomas raised his hands. "I am not a noble. I do not know your customs. I only want to do my job." The young advisor smiled faintly. "That is exactly why the court admires you." "Humility is rare," Thomas frowned. "Humility?" He had been trying to avoid trouble, not earn praise. But he realized arguing would not help. The court had already chosen their interpretation. At midday, the queen called for a break. Thomas was given a small room overlooking the palace gardens. He could see alien flowers blooming in patterns that seemed impossible, their colors shifting with the light. It was beautiful, and yet the weight of expectation pressed heavily on him. He sat by the window, thinking about Earth. He thought of his small apartment, his worn tools, and the quiet streets he used to walk at night. Here he was seen as more than human, more than ordinary, more than a repairman, and yet he felt like the same man who had been fixing starships hours ago. A soft knock at the door startled him. The Queen herself entered, moving gracefully across the room. She did not sit but stood near the window, looking at him. "You are restless," she observed. "Your mind wanders." "That is human, yes?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Thomas replied. "I did not expect any of this. I only fixed your ship." The Queen's eyes softened. "And yet that is what makes you special. You do not seek glory or power. You act with care and reason. That is rare among rulers and their courtiers." Thomas hesitated. "I am not special. I am just me. I am only useful because I know how to fix things." She nodded, smiling faintly. "Perhaps usefulness and courage are what the legends describe. Perhaps humans are misunderstood by many. But here, in this moment, your actions matter more than titles or bloodlines." He felt a strange warmth in her words. Not admiration, not flattery, but recognition. For the first time, Thomas realized that his human way of thinking, simple, practical, careful, was valuable in a world that relied heavily on tradition, ritual, and hierarchy. The afternoon brought more challenges. Thomas was asked to inspect other parts of the palace and the damaged ship again. Every action he took was watched, evaluated, and interpreted. Every repair he made, every suggestion he offered, became evidence of his chosen status. He tried to remain calm and focus on the work, but he could not escape the feeling that the entire court had eyes on him at all times. During one inspection, he met the Queen's generals. They were tall, strong, and disciplined, with expressions that revealed little emotion. Thomas spoke plainly, explaining how to repair some damaged defense systems using methods they had overlooked. The generals exchanged shocked glances. These were humans, yes, but their ideas were not bound by the same rules the court had followed for centuries. One general finally spoke, in a tone equal parts curiosity and challenge. "You are human. Your suggestions are simple, yet effective. Why do you think this way?" Thomas shrugged. "I look at the problem. I see what is broken. I try to fix it. I do not think of tradition or politics. I think of what works." The generals studied him silently. Then one of them nodded slowly. "Perhaps humans are different. Perhaps different is useful." The Queen watched quietly from the balcony. Thomas noticed her attention and felt a mixture of pride and fear. He had never been in such a position before, yet every simple decision he made carried consequences beyond his understanding. By evening, Thomas returned to the guest chamber. He was exhausted, yet his mind raced. The court's misunderstanding had placed him in a role he never asked for. He was not a hero, not a chosen one, not a prince of prophecy. He was Thomas, a human repairman. And yet here that was enough to inspire awe, respect, and even hope. As he lay on the simple bed, Thomas realized something important. The court's perception of him did not change who he was, but it gave him a new responsibility. He had the chance to show that humans, though ordinary in their own world, could think clearly, act bravely, and influence events far beyond what anyone expected. And for the first time, Thomas felt ready to face whatever the court, the Queen, or the universe would ask of him next. The next morning, Thomas awoke to the soft hum of the palace. The sunlight streaming through the crystalline windows painted the walls with colors he could not name. He dressed quickly, knowing that today he would face the court again. But unlike yesterday, he had heard whispers about something new, ceremonial trials. The court wanted him to prove his worth, even though he had saved the Queen's life. Thomas walked into the main hall. The room was already crowded. Courtiers and advisors gathered, their eyes bright with curiosity and anticipation. The Queen sat on her throne, her gaze calm but firm. She gestured to him. "Human, the court has chosen to test you. They say one who is chosen must show courage, wisdom, and clarity. Are you ready?" Thomas swallowed. I will do my best, Your Majesty," he said. He had never faced anything like this. On Earth, the greatest challenge he faced was a malfunctioning engine or a broken circuit. Here the challenges were unknown, and the stakes felt enormous. The first trial began. Thomas was led to a room filled with complex devices, floating holograms, and shifting panels. The advisor in charge explained in rapid alien speech, but the Queen translated, "This is a test of logic. You must stabilize the energy flows using the least number of adjustments. Time is limited." Thomas studied the room carefully. The devices moved unpredictably, and the holograms displayed patterns he had never seen. Yet he stayed calm. He remembered his training as a repairman, Observe, understand, plan, act. He touched a panel, rerouted power through a secondary channel, and watched as the energy flow stabilized. The advisors gasped. One whispered to another, nodding vigorously. Thomas could not understand their words, but the tone was clear. The court had not expected such a simple human solution to work. He stepped back, wiping his hands, and waited for the result. The Queen smiled faintly. You have succeeded. You think differently from our traditions, yet your solution is effective. That is why the court believes you are chosen. Thomas shook his head. I am only doing what seems right. That is all. Next came a test of endurance. Thomas was led to a courtyard where the air shimmered with heat. He was told to complete a series of physical tasks while carrying weighted objects. Many humans would have struggled, but Thomas had spent years repairing heavy machinery and climbing through cramped ship corridors. His hands were strong, his body accustomed to work. He lifted, pulled, and ran as instructed. The alien spectators watched every move, noting his determination and steady pace. At one point, a structure collapsed nearby, but Thomas reacted quickly, moving the debris aside to prevent damage. The court murmured in amazement. Human reflexes and quick thinking had turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of skill. After the endurance test, Thomas was led to a hall filled with scrolls, tablets, and glowing data panels. This was a test of wisdom and judgment. He was presented with scenarios of diplomacy, trade disputes, and internal court conflicts. The advisors spoke, trying to confuse him with technical language and cultural rules. Thomas listened carefully. He focused on the facts, on fairness, and on what would bring the best results for everyone involved. When he offered solutions, the court reacted with astonishment. His answers were clear, simple, and effective. They did not follow traditional strategies, but they solved problems. The Queen observed silently, her expression one of quiet approval. The day continued with more trials. Thomas was asked to repair ancient machinery in the palace that no one had understood for decades. He examined the devices, tested hypotheses, and tried solutions carefully. With patience, logic, and determination, he restored the machines to working order. Each success increased the court's admiration. Whispers spread quickly. The human was not only brave but wise, practical, and reliable. One of the senior advisors approached him cautiously. Human, you do not follow our ways, yet you succeed. How is this possible? Thomas shrugged. I do not know your customs. I only look at the problem, see what is broken, and fix it. That is all I know. The advisor's eyes widened. That is remarkable. To act without pride or fear, to think without tradition, is rare even among our best leaders. Perhaps the legends are true. By evening, Thomas was exhausted. Sweat covered his forehead. His hands were sore and his body ached from the day's physical trials. Yet there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that his simple approach had impressed the most powerful beings in the room. The Queen invited him to a private chamber for a moment of rest. She offered him water and he drank gratefully. She studied him with her luminous eyes. You have done well, human. The court sees you as chosen, but I see something more. You do not act for glory. You do not seek power. You act with reason, patience, and courage. That is rare in any being. Thomas shook his head. I am not special. I only do what I must. I do not want to be chosen or honored. I just want to help. The Queen smiled faintly. That is why you are worthy. True worth is shown through action, not desire. You act as a human, yet your deeds inspire more than mere words or rituals. That is why the court respects you, even if it misunderstands you. The next challenge was the most difficult yet. Thomas was asked to navigate a labyrinth designed to test both intelligence and composure. The walls shifted, the lighting changed, and traps were hidden at every turn. The court whispered predictions, expecting the human to fail. Yet Thomas moved carefully, observing patterns, testing pathways, and correcting mistakes without panic. Hours passed. Thomas reached the center of the labyrinth where the Queen awaited. She did not praise him immediately. Instead, she studied his expression, noting how he had remained calm, focused, and adaptable. You see clearly, human, she said softly. Even when everything is uncertain, you act with reason. That is why humans can survive in worlds so strange to them. Thomas felt tired, but he nodded. I do what I must. I cannot do more than that. The court erupted in quiet applause. To them, each trial had confirmed the prophecy. The human was not only chosen, but exceptional in ways no one could have imagined. Thomas looked around, feeling the weight of expectation. He had not sought this honor. yet it had been thrust upon him. As the sun set, Thomas was escorted back to his room. His body ached, but his mind was alive with thought. He had completed trials no human had ever faced, using only his patience, logic, and courage. The court saw him as a legend. The Queen saw him as a man of action. Thomas saw himself as human. That night, the Queen visited again. She did not speak of trials or court decisions. Instead, she asked about Earth, about his life before the station, about simple things he loved. Thomas told her of small joys, repairing engines, watching sunsets, and the quiet streets of his home planet. The Queen listened intently. "Your life is simple, yet your mind is strong," she said. "Perhaps the world misunderstands humans because it looks for grandeur rather than quiet courage." Thomas smiled faintly. "I do not know if humans are special. I only know that we try to fix what is broken in whatever way we can." The Queen nodded. "That is enough to change the hearts of many. That is enough to inspire loyalty and respect. You have done more than survive the trials. You have shown the court what humans are capable of." Thomas lay back, feeling a strange mixture of pride and humility. He had not sought fame, power, or honor. Yet through simple actions, careful thought, and calm courage, he had earned the respect of a powerful alien court. He realized that perhaps this was what humans had always done: face challenges with creativity, patience, and resilience even when the odds seemed impossible. In the quiet of the night, Thomas understood that the trials were not just for the court to judge him. They were a lesson, showing that being human meant acting with intelligence, heart, and courage, regardless of tradition or expectation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new eyes upon him, and perhaps even more tests. Yet Thomas felt ready, not because he was chosen by prophecy, but because he had proven to himself and others that simple human qualities, reason, care, and bravery, could stand against the most complex problems. And for the first time, Thomas realized that being himself was enough to face whatever the Queen, the court, or the universe would ask next. The sun had barely risen over the palace when alarms rang throughout the halls. Thomas, still adjusting to his new life among the alien court, rushed out of his chamber. The Queen's advisors and generals were already in motion, their faces tense. Thomas followed closely, trying to understand what had happened. A senior general spoke quickly, his voice firm but urgent. "The rival empire has launched an attack on our border planets. They see weakness in our Queen's recent absence and hope to exploit it." Thomas paused. War was not something he had prepared for. On Earth, his challenges had been machines and engines, not battles and strategy. Yet as he looked at the generals and courtiers, he realized that now his skills, calm thinking, observation, and practical solutions might be needed more than ever. The Queen appeared, her presence steady despite the alarm. "We will not panic. We will act with reason and courage," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, calming many who had begun to murmur in fear. The council gathered around a large table, showing holographic maps of the threatened planets. Generals discussed traditional strategies, formations, fleets, and ceremonial maneuvers designed to show strength rather than efficiency. Thomas listened carefully, noting that much of their strategy relied on rigid tradition. Finally, one general noticed him watching. "Human," he said, "you have observed our trials and your actions have proven unusual yet effective. What would you do?" Thomas studied the map. He saw gaps in their defenses that the Empire could exploit. He saw fleets underused and supply lines vulnerable. He spoke calmly. "I would focus on the places the enemy expects us to be weak. Fix the defenses that are neglected, use smaller forces to protect key points, and let workers and soldiers cooperate instead of following rigid orders. That way we can respond quickly to changes." The generals stared. One whispered to another. Another shook his head. "This is too simple," one said. "It cannot work." The Queen raised her hand. "We will try it. Human thinking has saved me once. It can help now. Prepare the defenses as he says." Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This was no longer a simple repair job. Lives depended on decisions he had never expected to make. Yet he did not panic. He observed, analyzed, and instructed, using common sense in ways the court had not considered. Over the next hours, Thomas worked with the generals and engineers. They repaired damaged planetary shields, reinforced critical stations, and rerouted energy to key points. He taught them how to think creatively instead of blindly following tradition. Workers and soldiers listened carefully, realizing that his advice was simple yet effective. When the enemy fleet appeared on the scanners, the palace was ready. Thomas's adjustments allowed the defending forces to move faster, respond to attacks, and protect the planet's most important points. The enemy was surprised. Their attacks were deflected, their maneuvers anticipated, and their forces scattered. During one attack, a strike hit a supply station. Thomas rushed to the scene. Debris and fire blocked the corridors and alarms rang loudly. Without hesitation, he guided the workers to stabilize the station, repair the systems, and protect civilians. His calm, practical decisions prevented disaster. The court and generals watched in amazement. This human, they realized, was not just clever in thought but brave in action. By evening, the attacks had stopped. The enemy retreated, unable to overcome the unexpectedly organized defense. The Queen's court erupted in praise and wonder. Thomas, exhausted, did not celebrate. He knew the work was not over. Repairs needed to continue, and the threat of another attack loomed. Yet, in his mind, he recognized that human logic, determination, and courage had made the difference. The Queen came to his side as he inspected the repair efforts. "You have done more than any prophecy could have predicted," she said. "You acted with reason, courage, and creativity. That is why humans are remarkable." Thomas shook his head. "I only did what seemed right. That is all I know," she smiled. "Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps being human is enough to show others a new way." The court soon approached him, eager to hear his advice for rebuilding and strengthening the empire. Thomas guided them carefully, showing practical methods that were unfamiliar but highly effective. In doing so, he earned not only the court's respect but also the loyalty of many generals and workers who had once doubted him. Yet, not everyone was pleased. Some nobles whispered behind closed doors, unhappy that a human, not of royal blood, influenced the Queen. Thomas could feel the tension, though no one spoke directly. He realized that admiration could easily turn into envy or fear. Still, he focused on the work, not the politics, letting his actions speak for themselves. In the days that followed, Thomas continued to repair ships, improve defenses, and advise the Queen. He began to understand the subtle politics of the court, the balance between tradition and innovation, and the way trust could change outcomes. The Queen often consulted him, asking for ideas on leadership, defense, and diplomacy. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, the Queen asked, "Human, why do you act with such calm and clarity? Others in power often act out of fear, pride, or desire. You do not," Thomas thought carefully. "I do not seek power or praise. I only see problems and try to fix them. That is what I know. Perhaps humans are not always clever, but we try to act wisely in what we understand." The Queen nodded slowly. "That is why you are valuable, not because of prophecy, but because you bring clarity where others bring confusion." Thomas felt a sense of purpose he had never known. For years he had lived a quiet life, repairing ships and living simply. Now he realized that human qualities, reason, courage, and practical thinking, could influence worlds far beyond his own. However, the court's attention brought challenges as well. Some nobles tried to discredit him, claiming that a human should not advise the Queen. One general approached him privately. "Be careful. Not all see your actions as helpful. Some will try to turn the Queen against you." Thomas nodded, understanding the warning. "I cannot control what others think. I can only do what is right." The general smiled faintly. "That is exactly why you may survive where others fail." Weeks passed. Thomas oversaw repairs, trained workers, and helped organize defenses. The court's admiration grew, and even skeptical nobles began to recognize his value. The Queen, impressed by his practical wisdom, spent more time with him, asking questions about humans, Earth, and the ways of simple problem-solving. Thomas shared stories of small triumphs like fixing a broken generator or creating a tool from nothing. She listened intently, fascinated by the contrast between human simplicity and alien complexity. During this time, intelligence reports arrived. The rival empire was regrouping, preparing a larger attack. The court grew tense. Thomas analyzed the reports, noting weaknesses the enemy might overlook. He suggested strategic positioning, use of smaller fleets to distract larger forces, and rapid repairs to damaged stations. His ideas were unconventional, but the Queen trusted him. The preparation for the next attack became a massive effort. Thomas coordinated teams, trained soldiers, and oversaw the repair of ships. His calm and clear instructions prevented mistakes and boosted morale. Soldiers who had once doubted the human now saw him as a leader, not of title but of action. Finally, the enemy fleet appeared again. Thomas's preparations worked perfectly. Ambushes, rapid defenses, and coordinated strikes forced the invaders to retreat once more. The court celebrated, and the Queen praised Thomas openly. "Your courage and clarity have saved many lives. You act not for glory, but for what is right. That is the mark of greatness." Thomas looked around at the cheering court. He felt a mix of pride and humility. He had never sought recognition, and yet his actions had made a real difference. Humans, he realized, were capable of far more than others imagined. His practical thinking, calm courage, and determination had influenced an entire empire. That night, the Queen visited him privately. "Tomorrow there will be discussions on alliances, treaties, and the court's future. The nobles will challenge your ideas. You must be ready." Thomas nodded. "I will do my best. I only want to help, nothing more," the Queen smiled. "That is exactly why you will succeed. You act with honesty and courage. That is more powerful than any title or prophecy." As Thomas lay in his chamber, he reflected on the past weeks. He had faced trials, danger, and suspicion. He had solved problems no one else could. And through it all, he had remained himself, a human who thought, acted, and cared. The court had misunderstood him as a chosen one, but in truth he had proven something more important. Humans could influence worlds not through magic or prophecy, but through clarity, courage, and reason. And for the first time, Thomas felt confident that whatever challenges the next day or the next enemy might bring, he would face them with the same steady hands and clear mind that had saved the Queen's empire twice already. The palace was quiet in the early morning, but Thomas's mind was restless. The past weeks had changed everything. From a simple repairman, he had become the center of attention in an alien empire. He had faced trials, defended planets, and influenced the court with nothing but calm reasoning, courage, and practical action. Yet today felt different. Today, he would face the consequences of his actions not in tests or battles, but in choice. The Queen summoned him to the throne room. When Thomas entered, the hall was filled with the murmurs of the court. Courtiers, generals, and nobles looked at him with anticipation. Some were filled with admiration, others with doubt. In the center, the Queen's expression was calm, her eyes luminous and steady. "You have proven yourself in ways our legends could not describe," she said. "The court believes you are the chosen mate, the one destined to guide and protect. But I must ask you, do you accept this role, human?" Thomas felt a weight on his shoulders heavier than any he had carried before. He thought of Earth, of his quiet life, of the simple streets, the small joys, and the ordinary work he had always loved. He thought of the Queen, of the court, and of the people who had come to trust his decisions. And he realized something important. He had a choice. I do not seek to be chosen," he said slowly. "I am only a human. I only know how to fix things and think clearly. I did not come here to be part of legends or to take power." The Queen's eyes softened. "I do not ask you to seek it. I ask only if you are willing to act alongside me. Not because prophecy demands it, but because you have shown what humans can do. You have shown courage, reason, and wisdom where others see none." Thomas thought carefully. He had faced the court, solved problems, and helped defend worlds. He had gained respect not through birth, strength, or wealth, but through action and human qualities. Perhaps this was what made him worthy. He nodded slowly. "I will stay, to help. But not because of destiny. Because it is the right thing to do." The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "That is all I ask. That is why you are truly chosen." The court erupted into quiet applause. Thomas felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. He had not sought honor, yet it had come to him naturally. More than that, he had realized that humans, though often underestimated, could influence even the most complex and powerful civilizations through clarity, courage, and action. In the following days, Thomas worked closely with the Queen and her advisors. Together they rebuilt infrastructure damaged during the attacks. Thomas taught practical methods of repair and organization. Soldiers and workers learned to act efficiently, thinking creatively rather than following rigid orders. The empire began to thrive in new ways, blending tradition with practical innovation. Even skeptical nobles began to see the value of his human perspective. Thomas's simple methods solved problems that had stumped generations of alien advisors. His presence reminded the court that intelligence, patience, and courage were not limited to one species or one culture. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of violet, the queen invited Thomas to walk with her in the palace gardens. The alien flowers glowed softly in the fading light, and a gentle breeze carried unfamiliar scents. "You have changed much here, human," the queen said, "not just in repair or defense, but in the hearts of the court. They trust you not as a stranger, but as someone whose actions speak for themselves." Thomas looked at the flowers, then at the queen. "I did what I could. I never thought it would matter so much." "Sometimes," she said softly, "simple actions matter more than grand plans. Your courage and clarity have reminded us all of that truth. You have done more than survive trials or save lives. You have shown what humans are capable of." Thomas felt a quiet pride. He had never sought to impress anyone, yet here he was, influencing the decisions of an entire empire. He realized that being himself, human, practical, and courageous, was enough to make a real difference. The following day, the court gathered for a final ceremony. The queen spoke to the assembled nobles, generals, and advisors. "The human, Thomas, has shown extraordinary courage, wisdom, and calm. The court once believed him chosen by prophecy. I now say that he is chosen by action. He has earned respect not through words or title, but through deeds. Let his example guide us all." The courtiers bowed, some more deeply than others. Thomas stood quietly, feeling a mixture of humility and acceptance. He had never sought such attention, but he understood now that leadership, respect, and trust were earned through effort, courage, and intelligence, not prophecy or bloodline. After the ceremony, Thomas was invited to dine with the queen privately. The table was filled with simple but elegant food, and they spoke quietly, far from the watchful eyes of the court. "You could have refused all of this," the queen said. "Yet you stayed, not for honor, but for what was right." Thomas nodded. "I could not leave. People needed help, and I could provide it. That is all I know." "That is enough," the queen said. "You have shown me a new way to see the world. You have reminded me that even in a court filled with tradition, clarity, courage, and reason can guide decisions better than fear or pride. You are human, and that is your strength." Thomas felt a quiet warmth. He had never imagined that being human could be so valued. It was not titles, not prophecy, not wealth. It was simple action, clear thought, and courage. That was what had changed the hearts of the queen, the court, and even the skeptical nobles. Over the following weeks, Thomas continued to work alongside the queen. Together, they improved infrastructure, repaired ships, and strengthened alliances. Thomas trained teams of engineers and soldiers, teaching them practical solutions and careful observation. His influence spread quietly but powerfully, showing the court that human ingenuity could match or even surpass ancient traditions. As time passed, the court's whispers of prophecy faded, replaced by genuine respect. Thomas had proven that a human could contribute more than expected. The courage and reasoning mattered more than rank, and that simple thinking could solve problems others deemed impossible. One evening, as Thomas repaired a small vessel damaged during training exercises, the queen appeared at his side. She watched silently for a moment before speaking. "You have done more than survive challenges. You have reshaped our understanding of what is possible. That is why you are truly chosen not by legend but by your own actions." Thomas smiled faintly. "I only fixed what needed fixing. I did what anyone else might have done if they could. Few would act with such clarity and courage," she said. "That is what makes you extraordinary." Thomas realized she was right. He had not sought honor or recognition, yet by staying true to himself, acting with care, and facing challenges calmly, he had earned respect across an entire empire. He had discovered that human qualities, reason, courage, and determination, were enough to change worlds. As he looked across the palace gardens that night, Thomas understood something profound. Being human was not a limitation. It was a strength. A strength that, when used wisely, could influence events far beyond what anyone expected. And as he stood beside the queen, he felt a quiet certainty. He would continue to act with honesty, courage, and practical wisdom, not because of prophecy or tradition, but because it was right. That was the choice he had made. That was the path he would follow. The court had once mistaken him for a figure of legend, a chosen mate destined by prophecy. But Thomas knew the truth. He had become important not because of destiny, but because he had acted with integrity, clarity, and courage, and that, he realized, was a far greater honor than any legend could ever provide. The queen looked at him, her expression calm and approving. "Together we will guide this empire, not by fear, not by power, but by reason and courage. And you, human, have shown us the way." Thomas nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. He had faced trials, danger, and misunderstanding, yet he had remained himself. He had proven that humans, simple and ordinary in their own world, could make a difference where it mattered most. As the palace lights glowed softly around them, Thomas knew that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a repairman. He was a human whose courage, reason, and actions had earned respect, trust, and a place beside a queen. And in that, he found a quiet joy far greater than he had ever imagined. The story of Thomas, the human repairman, became a legend in its own right. Not because he was prophesied or chosen by fate, but because he had acted with clarity, courage, and integrity, and that he knew was the true measure of being extraordinary.